Hey there, how's it going? Richard Kistnen here. And in this video, I wanted to share with you what happens to a judgment if you file for bankruptcy. And so I'm going to talk about this in the context of just the Chapter 7 case. So generally, a discharge that you get in bankruptcy ends up making any debt or liability that you have unenforceable. Chapter 7 particularly deals with unsecured debts, right? So if you're talking about credit cards, medical bills, things like that, where there's no collateral that exists, the discharge order operates to end and effectively terminate the creditor's ability to enforce that debt. So the question becomes, what if you have a judgment? And a judgment, I'm talking about someone sued you, let's say you owed a credit card, they sued you, and before you filed for bankruptcy, a judgment awarding the creditor, let's say, $5,000 was entered in the court against you. So it really depends. So where you're located and whatnot. I'm going to talk about this in the context of here in New York State. State laws may differ. So the real principle that applies here is whether or not you own property in the county. Again, from state to state and locality to locality, it may differ. But here in New York State, for instance, if a judgment is entered against you and it's recorded and entered in the Supreme Court, then that judgment becomes a lien automatically against any real estate, any property that you may own in that county. So again, if you have real estate, right, if you own real estate and you're looking to file for bankruptcy, you just want to be sure that the judgment, there's no judgment against you, because in essence, that judgment is then secured. It acts as a judicial lien by the property. Okay. Now, if you're filing for bankruptcy, what if you don't have any property? What happens to that judgment? Well, in effect, that judgment, the same thing. It becomes ineffectual, right? The creditor can't enforce it. It doesn't matter that it reached judgment status. It's treated just like any other unsecured debt, because that judgment doesn't tie to any property, right? So if you have a bank account or so, that's fine, but the judgment, after you file your bankruptcy and get your discharge, they can't enforce it. So, the question comes up, and I have to answer it all the time. Someone's been sued and they're concerned, or they find out about a judgment later on, and that's what triggers them wanting to file for bankruptcy. The short answer is, if the question is, what happens to a judgment against me if I file for bankruptcy? If you don't own any real estate and that judgment doesn't really attach to any property, again, the big thing that you want to know is real estate, then that judgment becomes non-effectual. It's essentially void after the filing of the bankruptcy, because the creditor can't enforce that judgment. Now, if you do own real estate, again, you just want to be sure. You may want to run a lien search or something like that to make sure that there's no judgment entered against you, particularly, again, if it operates like in New York, in that county, because if there is a judgment against you, at least here in New York, that judgment then becomes secured by any collateral that you may have. So if you're living here in New York City particularly, and you'd like to know more about filing your bankruptcy, you can check out my website, www.LORK.NYC. You can also give me office call, 718-738-2324. And also, if you are thinking about filing for bankruptcy and you want to file it yourself, maybe you don't have the cash available to hire an attorney, you have a right to file your own bankruptcy case. I encourage you to check out the Chapter 7 bankruptcy course that I created. Go step by step, form by form, going through all the things that you'll need to prepare, all the documents, schedules, petitions, and whatnot, to prepare and file your Chapter 7 bankruptcy case. And you can get access to the Chapter 7 bankruptcy course by visiting www.bankruptcy.LORK.NYC. Until next time, take care and be well.